unto us.
All right. I said this in the first service. I'll say it again. Our pastor is crazy, and I love him so much. But he's a crazy wild man, and I'm always thankful that he puts so much faith in people and people like me. And yeah, I had about a day and a half to really pray into this because he told me Friday afternoon. But as I reflected on what God's been doing in my life, I think that this word is very timely. And I believe that there's a word that I want to impart to this house today about the power of worship. Okay, shall we? Let's go. We, as beloved, we feel called to be many things. But the main thing that we're called to be is a house of worship. We believe our greatest value as a house isn't preaching, community, or serving, even though those are all beautiful, amazing things. However, our greatest value is simply worshiping Jesus. Because when everyone is looking at Jesus, all of a sudden we become united. When Jesus has his proper place, everything else falls into its proper place. And although the main way that we express our worship is music, worship simply refers to all the ways in which we adore, exalt, and love God. All the ways that we want to tell Jesus, this is how much I love you. And I have to start the story at the beginning when I fell in love with worship. I met Jesus when I was a 13-year-old kid and I had really long hair down to here. Used to wear punk rock t-shirts, Green Day, come on somebody. And I got saved at a church camp out in New York. And I remember the day that I met Jesus, I don't remember a thing that the preacher was saying. He was shouting or something. I don't remember what verses he was talking about. But I remember somehow I ended up at the front on my knees and I started to cry. And that night I felt madly, madly in love with the Son of God, Jesus. And I remember walking out of that room and everything looked different. The sky looked a little bluer, the grass was a little greener. The trees weren't just swaying, but they were singing praises to God. And I was like, wow, the world is so beautiful. And I remember going to church the next Sunday and the same worship team came up and the same songs were being played, but something was different. Because I was no longer singing about somebody, I was singing to somebody. Because you guys ever been in love? All of a sudden, all those love songs that you've heard all these years, now you know who they're about. Now you know who the radio is singing to. Now you know what all these love songs are about. And I realized that all of a sudden these songs were different because I knew who I was singing to. And I remember as worship was beginning, as this little crazy-haired kid, a thought crossed my mind as I looked up to heaven. And I remember thinking as a kid, Jesus, I want to show you how much I love you. I don't know how. I don't have the words. I don't know what to do. I don't know the proper way. I don't know how high to lift my hands or how to sing, or I don't know what to do, but all I know is before I leave, I want you to know how much you mean to me. And so I started to sing. And I realized two things at that moment. I realized, number one, I sing really loud. And in a very quiet room and not many people were singing, I realized I had a really loud voice. Number two, I realized I didn't sing that well. Because after worship, everyone was listening the whole time and they were like, Andrew, they would use words like, I love hearing your passion for God. When you sing, I can feel your passion, bro. And I'm like, anything else? They're like, no, that's it. I feel the passion, right? And I feel your love for God. But there was something in me that was burning, and so I started singing and I started yelling, and that wasn't enough. So my body, starts tapping, and I started dancing and I started jumping, even during the slow songs. When I was in junior high, I would dance during Here I Am to Worship. Come on, somebody. I'm here to worship God, whatever it takes. And that wasn't enough. So I was like, I wanna express my love in more ways. And so I started to look up all the best worship songs. And I started to look up Hillsong albums and Chris Tomlin albums. And I downloaded all of them illegally. Come on. I downloaded hundreds of Christian songs, and later someone told me it was bad. So I had to change my ways and delete them. But I just wanted language, and I didn't know what to say, so I used other people's songs to express my love for God. And it wasn't enough for me just to sing to God at church, and so I picked up this old guitar, and after a month of practice, I learned 2 chords. And I made every single worship song fit into those 2 chords, and I would sing every night, singing and yelling and screaming out to God, telling Him how much I love Him. How thankful I am that He saved me. And about a few months ago, I realized that so much in life has happened since then. And I've experienced so many ups and downs, so many failures and disappointments and heartaches. And a thought crossed my mind a few months ago that might be real for some of you in this room. And I thought to myself, it's been so long since I sang like that. It's been so long since I came to God and I said, I just want to tell you how much I love you. And I was singing at church, I would sing, when people were singing, but I forgot the last time I sang just to tell Him I love you. But recently, slowly, God's been returning and restoring my song to my heart. And it's been such a beautiful and intimate journey. And I started to remember the things that God had taught me as a little kid about worship. And those things are what I want to impart to our house today. Today, I want to talk about how we're called to worship, to build a house that God is pleased to dwell in. So the question is, why do we worship? The first reason that we worship is we worship as a response to seeing Jesus. When I was 13 years old, after that moment I had with Jesus, no one had to tell me to sing. No one had to convince me to worship. No one had to convince me to dance or pick up the guitar and sing love songs to God. Because all I could remember was when I saw His face, not literally, I'm still here, but when I saw all the amazing things that He's done for me and delivered me from, and the love that He's shown for me on the cross, I couldn't help but sing and show my adoration to Him. Worship is the natural human response to beholding Jesus. There is nothing else you can do. That's why I always tell people, the Bible tells us that there will come a day when every single person in the world, Christian or unchristian, no matter what you are, you will have to bow at the sight of Jesus. But here on earth, we get to worship because we choose to. Come on. Woo. But when we behold Jesus, our immediate response is to worship. Consider for a second how people responded whenever they saw angelic beings throughout the Bible. I always had this image in my mind that they were like really nice looking and glowing, but whenever someone saw an angelic being, the first reaction was fear and awe, and they almost started to bow and fall on their knees. Revelation 4 says, around the throne of God, all day, every single day, 24/7, for eternity, there are 4 living creatures flying around yelling, holy, holy, holy. God, there is no one like our God. And these angelic beings are described as having eyes all over their body, from head to toe, front and back. And I was like, what a weird design for your lead worshipers, God. And why in the world did you make them look like that? And it's because in order to worship, we need to see. And the more we see, the more we worship. And these creatures that were designed to worship, they needed to see more of God every single day. Because when our eyes are on God, we can't help but worship. But if I can be honest with you guys, the reason for much of my problems, I don't know about y'all, is because my eyes are on me. is because my eyes are on my failures and my shortcomings, my bank account, come on somebody, my job, my role, my weaknesses. And when I look at me, I start to become anxious. When I start to look at me, I start to get stressed. When I look at me, I start to feel like I'm not good enough. And this is why the psalmist says in Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. Why? Because when He is God, I'm not God. Praise God that I'm not God. Anyone happy that you're not God? Thank God that you're not in control. Thank God that the fate of the world is not dependent on me. The fate of my family is not on my shoulders. When He's in control, I'm not in control. When He's the master of my life, I no longer have to be the master of my life. The psalmist in Psalm 42 says, why are you downcast, O my soul? Put your hope in God. He's saying to himself, hey, it's time to wake up. Take your eyes off yourself and put it on Jesus. I imagine that there were nights when David was a shepherd, where after a long day of herding his sheep, he just went by himself off to the fields and he looked up to heaven and he said, God, tonight I don't want to be the shepherd. I want you to be the shepherd. And he started singing with his harp and he started singing, the Lord is my shepherd. And I don't know the melody he used, but he started singing to God and he said, tonight you're in control. And I imagine years later down the line when he became king, some nights maybe he snuck off by himself when everyone else had gone to bed and he took out his old harp. He said, it's been a while, dusted it off, looked up to heaven and he said, God, tonight I don't want to be king. I want you to be king. And I want to look at you because when my eyes are on me, I get stressed out. But when my eyes are on you, worship comes out of my heart. If we ever find ourselves dysregulated and discouraged, stop what you're doing and look at Jesus. Look at His goodness. Look at His beauty. Look at the things He's done for you. The second reason that we worship is because God inhabits the praises of His people. Psalm 22 famously says, you are enthroned on the praises of Israel. In the beginning of the psalm, David begins by asking God, why have you forsaken me? What kind of worship song begins like that? But eventually he shifts to this other mode and he says, God, you're still holy and you're enthroned on the praises of your people. And some translations say you inhabit or dwell in the praise of your people. You know what he's saying? God, I feel like you abandoned me, but when I lift my hands, I feel your nearness. God, you feel so far, but when I start to sing, I feel your presence. God, I feel like you've abandoned me, but I know when I start to praise, you start coming and dwelling in my worship. And this is why eventually he built the tabernacle where there was worship going on 24/7 because he always wanted to feel near to God. This verse means that when God's people praise, He becomes uniquely present to them. Now I have to say that praise doesn't make God king. He's king regardless. However, praise acknowledges that He's king. Let me say this again. Praise doesn't make God king. He's already king, whether you like it or not. But praise is how we recognize that He's king. It's the recognition of His presence and our participation through worship that allows heaven to touch the earth, that allows heaven to walk in to Beloved Church. In Genesis chapter 28, this is one of my favorite passages regarding the presence of God. There's a man named Jacob, and he was stressed out. He was on the run because his brother wanted to kill him. Man, the problems that these Bible guys went through is crazy, right? And he's on the run because his brother is trying to kill him. he gets so tired on his journey that he finds a rock to lay his head and falls asleep on this field, this random field. He doesn't even know where he is. But as he dreams, he sees a staircase going up to heaven from this rock, this random rock, all the way to heaven, and angels start walking down. And as the heavens are open, the voice of God comes, and he starts to say, Jacob, I have a calling for you and a destiny for you. He starts to encourage him. And then he wakes up and he says these words, surely the Lord was in this place, and I wasn't aware of it. Surely the Lord was in this place, and I was not aware of it. And he called it the house of God, Bethel. You know, when I was a kid, I met God most powerfully whenever I was on a mountain, because our church camps were always on mountains. And every single summer and every single winter, like a good church boy, I signed up for that winter retreat, that winter camp, that summer camp, that mission trip. And I would get on the bus, and we would go up the mountain, and I would get so excited because I'm about to meet God. And up there on the mountain, for some reason, the praise songs, they sounded a little bit better. The praise leader, his voice sounded a little bit better than back at home. The sermon just hit a little bit harder. I felt a little bit more conviction. And I always ended up in tears. I always ended up on my knees. I always ended up confessing my sins. And we would go back down the mountain. And I remember we would go to church on Sunday after this mountaintop experience. And the same band would come up. And the same preacher would come up. But it would feel a little bit different. And some Sundays I remember thinking, surely the Lord is not in this place. At least not like on the mountain. At least not like on the mission field. And as a kid, you know what I started to believe? God lives on the mountain. Woo! And you know what my faith became? I gotta wait another year to meet God on the mountain again. If only he was here, but I need to wait to take that bus ride up again, to meet God again, to commune with God again. If only he was here. And the question is, did God change from the mountain to the valley? Did God change from the mission field to my church? If God did not change, then what has changed? What changed is that here, I was not aware of it. What if God, imagine with me for a second, what if God is in this place and we're not aware of it? Woo, come on. What if God is in your home and you're just not aware of it? What if God is in your church and you're just not aware of it? What if God is at your workplace and you're just not aware of it? What if God is in your situation, in your circumstance, in your valley, in your suffering, in your confusion, and you just haven't recognized him? What if the ground was holy before Moses got there, but the burning bush made him aware of it? What if God has always been here, but when we start to praise, then all of a sudden the recognition of his presence fills our hearts and heaven touches the earth? Worship is our voluntary recognition that Jesus is on his throne. And when we worship, he inhabits our praises. When you feel out of control, remember there's always someone on the throne. I've heard it said, many ask God to come, but few ask God to stay. But here at Beloved, we want to invite God to stay, to inhabit our praises forever and ever. The final reason that I want to give for why we worship is we worship because he is worthy. And I know this is a really simple reason, but I need to unpack this by painting a picture of heaven showed to us by John in Revelation. In Revelation chapter 4 through 5, John sees a vision. And in the middle of heaven, he sees a throne and someone is sitting in the distance, far off. And he sees colors that he can't even explain, and he tries to use the language that he has, but it's so limited. He's like, I'm trying to describe what I'm seeing. He sees something like lightning and thunder coming out of the throne of God. And there's this awe and terror that comes over him. And in the vision, around the person on the throne, he sees angels and elders that worship day and night, crying, "Worthy and holy, there's no one like you." And all of a sudden, the scene shifts, and John sees a scroll that was sealed. And all of a sudden, this angel proclaims across heaven, "Who is worthy to break the seal and open the scroll?" Now, this seems like random imagery, but I need you to understand what the scroll represents. The scroll represents God's plan to redeem all things. His plan for salvation, His plan for redemption, His plan to defeat evil. Now, the problem with the fact that the scroll is sealed is that if no one can break the seal, what that means is there is no justice for evil. As I turn on the TV, as I look at the news, we see in this world that there's some injustices that only God can fix. But if no one can open the scroll, then that evil goes unchecked. There is no justice for evil. If no one can break the seal, there is no hope for salvation. Can I get real for a second? It means there's no hope for my family. It means there's no hope for my friends. It means there's no hope for those who have died and are in the grave now, because no one can open the scroll. It means the world will remain broken with no hope. And when John recognizes this, he begins to weep because no one was found worthy to open the scroll. And he was left asking, like many of us, is there anyone worthy? Contained in this question are questions that we are asking every single day. Is there hope for my brokenness? Is there salvation for my family? Is there healing for my disease? Is there freedom from my bondage and addiction? Is there an end to suffering? Does the story get better? Is there anyone worthy? Is there any friend or family member who can heal my sorrow? Any political candidate that can solve our world's problems? Any world leader? Any pastor or preacher that will heal my wounds? And he weeps because no one is found worthy. And in this hopeless situation, a voice calls out in heaven and says, there is one who is worthy. The Lion of Judah has triumphed over death. There is hope for your situation. There is redemption for this world. And his name is Jesus. And as one voice, all of heaven starts to sing, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals because you were slain. And with your blood, you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. There is hope. There is a better end to this story. And his name is Jesus. One thing I've come to know about life is that everything changes. The world changes, people change, friendships change, family changes, feelings change. And what I need most is something that stays the same. And I don't worship, and this is why I have to say I don't worship because I feel like it. I worship because he's still worthy. I don't worship because my situation is good. I worship because he is still good. No matter what's happening in my life, Jesus is still on the throne. The Lamb of God is still worthy. And after all these years, when I was a little kid, I remember worshiping Jesus because I thought the worst thing that I've ever done was to curse at school. And I would cry over the one curse word I said when I was in junior high. I was like, God, I can't believe I said that. And I was crying. And ever since then, I have to admit, I've done a lot worse. I'm sorry to say that. Surprise. I've had a lot more sins and failures. And I've realized that I'm far worse than I ever imagined that I could be. But I'm standing here to tell you that the reason why Jesus is worthy is because I've experienced His grace in far greater ways than I ever thought I could possibly get. And to this day, there is still one on the throne, and He is worthy. Can I get the worship team to come up? Now, if we worship as a response to seeing Jesus, and He's done so many great things in our lives, and we worship because He inhabits our praises, what is our response? Our response must always be undignified praise. Extravagant grace demands extravagant praise. You know, when I was a kid, like I was saying earlier on, I didn't know how to worship. I had never read a rule book. I had never learned this in a class. No one told me this is how you raise your hands, and this is how you sing, this is how you kneel, and this is how you dance. And this is why I fumbled my way through it. But I knew one thing, that the person that I love most is in the room. And I remember thinking, even as a little kid, if He's here, then before I leave, He's gonna know how much I love Him. And so I started to sing, I started to shout, I started to cry, I started to stamp my feet, I started to clap. I started to sing other songs while the worship leader was singing one song. I was singing off key when they were singing in one key. I started to move around. I started to go up to other people and ask for prayer. And I just remember thinking, I just need God to know how much I love Him. Undignified worship risks embarrassments. It says, I'll lift my hands, I'll kneel, I'll weep, I'll dance, even if others aren't, because no one else matters, because the one I love most is in the room. And this is why in 2 Samuel, David danced before the Lord, saying, if He is watching, I don't care who else is. This is why the woman with the alabaster jar in Luke 7 looked around her house and said, I need to give Jesus something to show Him how much He means to me. So she got the most expensive, precious thing she has, and she breaks it at the feet of Jesus to say, there is only one worthy of all my worship. And I will do whatever it takes for Him to see that. You know, recently, God's been restoring my song. And these old songs that used to have so much meaning to me, that I sang in junior high and high school and college, and for so many years, these songs carried me into the presence of God, into His throne room. And when I was discouraged, I felt like His hand came around me and would hug me as I started to sing to Him. These songs that had lost their meaning, all of a sudden started to come back into my heart. And late at night, I started to sing, draw me close to You, and how great is our God. I need You, Lord. But this week, I was reminded of one song that I used to sing a lot when I needed encouragement and when I had lost my way. There was this old song we used to sing by United Pursuit. And there was a line that went like this. Oh, take me back to the beginning, when I was young, running through the fields with You. Lord, take me back to the beginning, when I was young, running through the fields with You. And I told God I miss the days when I would sing to you and everyone else disappeared. I had nothing to prove. I had nothing to gain. I had no other reason I was here. All I wanted was to show you how much I love you. I have this quote by the great Tim Keller that embodies everything that I want to say. You should never go to God because He's useful. Go because He's beautiful. And yet there's nothing more useful than finding God beautiful. For the application today, in a second, I'm going to have everyone stand and the worship team is going to lead us. But I need to ask you guys for a favor because I need to do this with my church. I feel like a kid again and I'm relearning how to praise and how to worship and what words to say to God, and it's a little clunky. I don't know how to lift my hands, and am I holy or like this or like, I don't know. But can you join me? I don't know. It's been years for you. I don't know if recently your song returned or you're doing great with God. But can you help me? Can we do something together? Can we all, with one voice, look at Jesus and say, before I leave, I want you to know how much you mean to me. Before I walk out of this building, I want you to know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, how much I love you. And I want you to do whatever you can. Do whatever you need to do. Go wherever you need to go. Shout whatever you need to shout. Move however you want to move. And as the worship team leads us, let's do this together. Before I leave, God, I'm going to show you. I want to tell you how much you mean to me. Can we all stand to our feet? Or you can go to the pews, go on your knees, whatever you want to do. But can we just look at Jesus? Look at all that He's done for you. Remember what He means to you. And with whatever words, with whatever actions, tell Him, this is how much I love you.